All right, so welcome everyone. I'm Amy Pearson. Some of you know me. I'm new to some of you, but I want to just give you a little bit of information about me and what this series is, and then we're just going to dive in. I'm over at livebrazen.com. Just as a heads up, I'm in a process of rebranding. So I think it was you, Duke, who sent me an email. Thank you. To let me know that some of my links are not working. So yes, the website is under a rebranding process. So I'll be rebranding as Becoming Amy, and I'm working on a memoir that is tentatively called Forgiving Amy. So that is the new website is going to have access to my old programs, and then I'm going to be doing some blogging about a lot of things that you may not be used to me blogging about. It might be about entrepreneurship. It might be about, anything really that is interesting to me, because some of you may already know me and know that I bounce around a lot. I have a lot of interests, but the bottom line is that whatever I'm going to be blogging about, it's going to hopefully be of help to you. And it's also going to be vulnerable because I really feel like one of my purposes in life is to show that we're all human beings, and sort of the way that we learn is by overcoming sort of our own vulnerabilities. And so I share a lot of that stuff. Okay. And so that's really what this new brand is going to be about. So I've been a coach for 10 years. I have been a master coach for 8 years. I've built a multi-six-figure coaching practice. I've written a book. I'm working with New York Times bestselling author Jennifer Lauk, who wrote Blackbird, on finishing up my memoir, which I hope this is the year. It's been several years in the making, and I've really been learning a lot about the process of writing, which is really interesting to me. I have 3 kids. I have a dog and 2 cats. Clients pay me $3,500 to work with me privately. I really support mostly women who are interested in entrepreneurship or writing or being out there in some way and need support around that. I got my start in the coaching practice really because I found out that a big part of my own misery in my life was that I was obsessed with getting people to approve of me. And on the other side of that, really terrified of any kind of judgment or criticism or rejection. And so I started to write about this idea of being an approval addict. And so I created a lot of content around that. I have a course around that. And really interested in what does the other side of that look like, and that's where my business came into play. I call it Live Brazen. It's really about being who you are without apologies. And so that is why my business is called Brazen, because a lot of times the word brazen has been used to shame women. Brazen hussy is an expression I think I've heard the most. But really the idea of being who you are without apology, and what does that look like? So in my own life, I would say, a lot of people who are in my community are coaches. And, in my own life, I would say that the coaching tools that I use and the coaching tools that I'm demoing in this series have really helped me to dramatically change my life, dramatically change who I am. I spent some time and I actually wrote kind of a list of all the kind of like day-to-day sort of mundane ways that coaching has transformed me. And so I wrote, this is actually something I wrote a couple years ago, but I'm just going to read this to you because this is a coaching demo series. I'm demoing the tools that I use in my practice. And I wanted to just kind of share how these tools have made a difference for me. So these are kind of day-to-day kind of things that have changed for me. So I wrote, let's see, I said, miracles are real when you actually tell the truth about your weight on your driver's license. Your 3-year-old calls the nanny mom and it doesn't bother you at all. somebody tells your gorgeous sister-in-law she looks like a movie star while standing next to her, and it doesn't make you feel at all diminished. You no longer force yourself to go to social functions when you'd rather be in your PJs. Obsessing about people's opinions feels like ancient history. You can look at your post-baby body without nitpicking every inch. You can spot something beautiful on the rack without having to buy it. You don't worry about perfecting your kids, you just want them to be happy. You let yourself cry in front of a friend. You can receive a compliment without immediately trying to minimize it. You're actually inspired, not threatened by the achievements of your colleagues. You're no longer trying to dazzle everyone who meets you. You figured out how to make a fantastic living working part-time, doing your own unique thing in the world while helping people. So that's just a little taste, you guys, of the ways that these tools that I'm demoing in this series have transformed my life. And so what I've been doing, if you haven't been a part of this series yet and you're here for the first time, welcome. If you've been a part of this series and you know that these demos are meant to be cumulative, they actually build on each other. But if it's your first time, they're fine a la carte as well. And so you can go, I believe that the link that I posted in the chat is the link to the actual demos. So you can see what I did in the first class and what I did in the second class. And then you can go back there because I'm going to be teaching 4 more demos. All right, and so today we're going to be, well, let's see. First of all, this series is for you. I'm trying to like get all my introductions out of the way here. This series is for you if you maybe are struggling with something, or you just have this sense, right, that things are not okay. And you want to work on that using some new tools, and you want to learn some new tools. You want to approach it from a different angle. Maybe you're interested in life coaching, but you've never worked with a coach, and you want to have a better idea of what some of the tools are. Maybe you're a coach and you just want to see me using the tools because I'm a master coach and I teach these tools. So those are some here. And then after today, you'll receive some coaching directly from me if you volunteer, and I might need a few of you today. Or you'll receive coaching via osmosis, because a lot of times when you hear other people getting coached, it helps you as well. I do hear some background. Multitasking is totally understandable, but if it's you, go ahead and mute your call. You can just, there's like a little mute option. And that way you're not, when sounds come on in Zoom, it like changes the screen and stuff. So if you are multitasking or if you're making noise, go ahead and mute yourself. All right. So what did I say? Coaching through osmosis. And then I'm hoping after today, gosh, who is that? Somebody is doing some serious multitasking. I'm just going to see if I can mute all of you maybe. Let's see. All right, I think we're good. Okay. So let's see, where was I? Coaching through osmosis. So, and then after today, I hope you leave with some very concrete, practical tools. Today is a very practical day that will help you right away in your life with anything that you're struggling with. You can use this for pretty much anything. You'll have a better understanding of some of the tools that I use in my own coaching practice. And you will know that you are not alone, because here we are, we're taking, and you should pat yourself on the back for taking time out of your day to do this for yourself. Because a lot of times, most of us, it's easy for us to get busy in our lives, right? It's easy for us to get focused on work, focused on family, focused on everything but ourselves. And and then we can easily just spend our whole lives like that. And then we look back and go, what the hell just happened? I'm 80 years old. What did I do? So you just took the time out of your day to learn some tools that can help you make changes in your life. That is worth a pat on the back. All right. So specifically today, I'm going to cover a tool that I do teach in the coach certification program that I'm a part of, Martha Beck. It's called ACT. It's based on, it's really a school of psychology. I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about it. but I'm going to teach you something from that school of psychology that will help sort of build on what we did in the first coaching demo, which was using Byron Katie's The Work to help reevaluate some of our thoughts and stories. And what I did last week, which was the the reality matrix, where we looked at what thoughts are, what feelings are, what circumstances are, what behaviors are, and how that impacts our results. And so today we're going to use ACT, and we're going to look at what do we do when we find ourselves continuing to think thoughts that create crappy results in our lives, okay? Because what happens is that, we can learn these tools, right? We can use the work, or we can use the reality matrix to help find thoughts that bring relief, that help us feel better and produce better results. I highly recommend you guys go listen to those classes if you haven't heard them. But the thing is, most of the time, let's get real, like we have learned these stressful thoughts, these stories, these ways of interpreting the world, probably from the time we were just becoming verbal, right? Like we probably have held on to these stories because we learned them from our parents or our caretakers, or they've been passed on from our ancestors. There's all this data now that stuff gets passed on in our genes if we're thinking about trauma. Let's see. Yeah, that link should be right above you, my dear. That was a private little note. So it should be livebrazen.com demos. So check that out. It's pretty simple link, but if it doesn't work, then it might be livebrazen.com demo. So we have held on to these stories, these thoughts, right, that produce certain emotions in our body that lead us to behave in certain ways that create results that aren't working for us, probably for years and years and years and years and years since we were children. Gosh, what was I thinking? Oh, I was thinking about my own life. And when I had mentioned in the beginning how I had created a coaching practice that was multiple six figures. And that is true. And one of the reasons I've recently stepped back and I've decided to rebrand and I've decided to take a break is because I've really felt that although I had created this business that was making multiple six figures, I wasn't really feeling like I had the kind of freedom that I wanted. I was like, so for example, like my kids, I have two 11-year-olds and I have a 9-year-old. She just turned 9 yesterday. And, inevitably, right, one would get sick and the school would call me and I would just feel like it was stressful for me to participate in my kids' lives the way I wanted to. Even though I was working for myself, I was creating my own hours. I had the money to hire extra help. I just felt like something wasn't right. I was still feeling like I didn't have the kind of freedom in my business that I wanted. And so I was just thinking today about this because I'm doing a rebrand and I'm working on building myself back up to similar to where I was, but learning from the past and structuring my work in a way that really supports my own freedom. But I was thinking, that experience of building my business to that level and then feeling like I didn't have that much freedom has really influenced my thinking about what it means, what it takes to become an entrepreneur. And there's this one belief that I am aware that I'm having, which is that if I want to grow my business and grow my sort of my income, then it will interfere with my freedom to be a mom. So that's a thought, right? That's a story. It's based on past experience. It's a conclusion that I drew. But the problem with that story is that there are some things about that story that are helping me. One is that I know that I can use my experience to learn from that and create something different that works, okay? But there's also something about that brings about the feeling state of fear. And a lot of that is because I have past trauma related to working too much and losing someone I love. So for example, when my mom died, it's been almost 12 years now that she died. But when she died, I was working on a report. I was working for a think tank, and I was working on a report, and I didn't go to her last session. She was having drugs. She was getting intravenous drug treatment for, it was a drug that was supposed to keep her from getting cancer again. And I didn't go to her last session, and I missed seeing her because I was working on this report. I was working. And so I have this past kind of trauma associated with, if I work too much, it'll interfere with my relationships. And so that is a story. And that story is a sort of a thought, not sort of, it's a thought that is keeping me from what I want. So what I want you guys to start doing as a result of this series is to understand when you are having thoughts, and really it's just a story you're telling yourself. It's a way of interpreting reality, our circumstances, that is either that, and those thoughts that you have can either help you or they can hurt you. You need to be really, really clear about what thoughts you're having and whether they're helping you or hurting you. So that's the first step in all of this. And I would say, sometimes people need some support around that. And so we're working on that in this demo series so that hopefully you will become more aware of what your thoughts are. Now, a lot of us go around in this life not even realizing that we don't have to believe our thoughts. I don't know, it's not like, 9/11 or something else. Like, I know a lot of people in a generation before me knew when JFK got shot, or these events in life where it's like you remember exactly what you were doing when it happened, right? Because it was so significant. Well, I know at one point when I was in coach training, someone told me that you do not have to believe all of your thoughts. You don't have to believe them. So I don't know who said it, and I don't remember exactly what I was doing, but it's one of those kinds of things that is that significant, that someone told me you don't have to believe all of your thoughts, right? Because I just went around kind of believing everything I thought. I thought my stories were true, and that whatever my story is, whether it was causing me stress or not, that thought was true, and that I didn't have a choice in the matter. So that's the first thing, you guys, is to understand that your thinking, the way that you're interpreting reality, isn't necessarily true. Just because you're having the thought doesn't mean it's true. That you can interpret reality in infinite ways. There are infinite ways to interpret reality. So if you were not a part of this series last week, please go and listen to that. Because Kathy and I worked on some ways that she could reinterpret her reality that would create a different feeling state, relief, that we broke down and saw very clearly influenced her reality, influenced her results in a positive way. So that's the first thing. So what I want to do right now, and just, guys, I'm going to need a few volunteers, okay? So just planting the seed right now. In a few minutes, I'm going to need a few volunteers. You're not going to be spending a lot of time with me. You can keep your video off if you want. It's really just very simple. This is very simple coaching tools, but I will need a couple of volunteers, and it'll benefit you. So please, just planting the seed. So right now, though, I'm going to share with you an exercise that I believe is from Martha Beck's book, The 4-Day Win, which happens to be a book around emotional eating and dieting. I wouldn't say it's really a diet book, but it has to do with our relationship with food. But the 4-Day Win is kind of I would say maybe a meditation that will help you to kind of, it's a mindfulness meditation really, about how to sort of help you to understand this concept that we are not our thoughts. So just kind of listen along. Now there are, I'm going to introduce you to 3 parts of yourself, okay? So the first part is called the wild child. Now, the wild child is this part of you that wants freedom, right? And it wants to be able to do what it wants. It wants to say what it wants to eat what it wants to spend whatever it wants. And it doesn't want anybody or anything getting in the way with that, okay? So what you can do is you can hold out your left hand and you can imagine your wild child in your palm, right? Okay, and she's like 2 inches, maybe a little taller, maybe 4 inches high. And maybe she looks like a cave girl, right? Like she's got her hairs all out to here and she's barely wearing any clothes, or maybe she's, I don't know. you can create your own wild child, or maybe she's drinking a fifth, or she's eating a whole chocolate 5-layer cake, whatever. She's your wild child, okay? And she just wants freedom. She doesn't want anyone getting in the way of that. Okay, now she's here, okay, and then she likes to whisper things into your ear, like she'll like to say, you deserve that cake, or you should just buy that, it looks amazing on you, it doesn't matter, like you find the money for it, or don't listen to that asshole, right? Or let's just quit, let's quit this job, so she's gonna say things that are really in your mind. She's gonna tell you things that are in line with what a wild child would say. Now, in your right palm, this is going to be your inner dictator, okay? So same height. Your inner dictator, you can imagine her, she's wearing army fatigues, or she's got like a whole like S&M thing going with a whip. I don't know, like whatever you want her to look like, but she is your inner dictator. Now, your inner dictator is like, she does want the best for you. Like she wants you to be your fucking best self, right? Like she's like the strictest, most helicopter parent there, like in history, okay? So she is going to be, talking to you about how you should have done that right, or you're such a loser if you don't do that, or you need to get up earlier, you should have, if you jogged 3 miles, you should have jogged a whole 7 miles. She's really, really strict, and she's really just wants you to get your shit together, okay? So that's your inner dictator, okay? So I want you to hold them, and she'll, so you can imagine the kind of things she says. Some of us have extremely brutal inner dictators. And, some of us, they're a little more subtle, but you can imagine the kind of stuff they say in your ear. Just as a side, I would say I don't have that strong of an inner dictator anymore. But my wild child really is still like, she's my biggest like most negative influence. I really need to get her under control. But okay, so you have them both in the palms of your hands. Now I want you can close your eyes for this. And you're going to send them both compassion. You're going to send them love. You're going to thank them for trying to do right by you, right? Because the wild child wants you to be free and happy and joyful. And your inner dictator wants you to be your best self, right? They in the end, even though it's sort of like misguided, their methods aren't the greatest, right? They still want the best for you. So send them gratitude, send them love, right? Now, I'm going to introduce you to a third part of yourself. There is a part of you right now who is aware of the wild child and is aware of the dictator. It's that part of you who just sent the two of them that love, okay? And that is the watcher. It's part of you. It's your watcher. It's that part of you that can be aware of your dictator and your wild child, okay? And so this is the part of you that can take a step back and can go, oh, that's my inner dictator talking, or that's my wild child talking. This is the part of you that observes, okay? This is the part of you that stands back and observes these dynamics and can say, oh, that's probably not the best. Eating that whole chocolate cake, probably not the best idea. Let's just savor the bites that we can savor and see how we feel. telling myself that I'm a loser, probably not the best thing. That's my inner dictator. She's trying to help me, but it really isn't that helpful to be speaking to myself that way. So that's your watcher talking to you. So what we're going to do today is we're really going to use a tool from ACT, which stands for Action and Commitment Therapy, which is a school of psychology. And it's going to help us to remind ourselves to become the watcher, okay? Because what happens is when you become the watcher, when you remember that you are the watcher, you slow down and you kind of stop the process, the self-destructive processes that happen when you're not aware, okay? And so last week we talked about the reality matrix. We talked about how there are circumstances that are not in our control and that we have thoughts about those circumstances. Those thoughts can either help us or hurt us, right? Because the thoughts that hurt us will lead to a feeling of anxiety, stress, hatred, guilt, discomfort, right, in our body. That leads us to behave in certain ways, yelling, screaming, fighting, cussing at, flipping off people in the car. I don't know, like not so helpful behaviors that lead to not so helpful results. This can get really serious, or it can just be something mundane. So what we want to do is we want to be able to assume that watcher position, because if we don't, then sometimes we just go down the bunny hole. All right. And the thing to know is that, you know, even though we worked on the work, we did the work in our first session, even though we looked at the reality matrix and we found ways to replace our thoughts with others that bring positive results in our lives. We have been, like I was saying earlier, we've had these thoughts for a long time. So what happens is it creates these grooves in our brain, right? It's like a road that's been traveled over and over and over again. And it gets so used to being traveled, it's like these deep grooves, right, form. And then it becomes easier and easier to travel those roads, easier and easier to fire those thoughts. So even though you may be working on it, even though you may have done the work on it, even though you may have looked at what are some thoughts I can bring in to replace the stressful thought, you're still going to get triggered, right? Because you can't control circumstances. Things will happen to trigger you that will, if you're not aware, if you're not assuming that role of the watcher, will lead you back into behaviors that aren't going to help you. And it's totally normal that that happens, right? I remember when I first started learning these tools 9-10 years ago, and I got really frustrated because even though I knew that I knew better, I still would get triggered and I would still behave in ways that I knew were not helpful. But it was even worse because I was aware of it and I was still doing it. And so it was easy for me to even be like the inner dictator, to be even more cruel to me. It was like I became even more ashamed of my behavior because I was aware of it. And so I want you guys to realize that it's normal to get triggered. And so you, now what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you a tool that you can use to stop the process of going down the bunny hole and, you know, behaving in ways that aren't helpful. Okay. Does anybody have any thoughts, comments about any of that so far? Feel free to post in the chat too as I'm talking, or, you know, you guys are so quiet. Like every week it's so quiet. You guys are just kind of just so sweet and quiet and just listen. All right. So what I want to do right now. Okay, nice. All right, thanks, Eth. So what I want to do is I want to ask for, first of all, as a group, I want you to think of, I want you to practice this idea of catching your thoughts, okay? So we all have endless opportunities to practice this because there's always some new circumstance, right, that triggers us. So I want you to think of something that happened maybe today or yesterday that triggered you into a thought that created stress. So I gave you the example for me of this this thought that, rebuilding my brand and becoming, going back to sort of that sort of, I don't know, level in my business might interfere with my family life. Okay. So there was this thought there that created stress for me, or creates stress if I'm not watching it, which could lead me to not do what I need to do to build my business, right? Which is then creating results I don't want. So another thought that I had, this one's a little bit more, I guess, related to family life, is that today, my twins, who are 11, went off to camp. They went off to the beach for 3 days. I hate it when they leave me. But anyway, I guess that's more of a feeling. But so I had to pack for them. They didn't really help me. I just packed for them. And I think I packed too much. I mean, I went through the packing list and everything was in there, but I couldn't get all their shoes in their little duffel bag. And then I don't have one of those super like hi-fi like, duffel like sleeping bags that gets really small. So they have this like honking sleeping bag, and they have their suitcase, and they have like this other bag with their shoes in it, and then their pillow. And it's like, I'm really worried about them, because I'm worried they're not going to be able to carry their stuff. And that's just a thought, right? It's a thought that's producing this fear, this emotion of fear and guilt, because I didn't pack right for them. And what it's doing is it's like it's causing this anxiety. Okay. So that's another thought. That's one that's fresh for today, right? Is this thought. And, I've worked on that. I've used some thought replacement around that, because there's really nothing I can do about it. So I'm just sending them love and wishing them well, and understanding that whatever happens is going to be for their their benefit, and be the best for them. So what are some thoughts that you guys are having? Like, it could be just something simple. If you have one that you want to share, you can post it to the comments. My dog is snoring, by the way. Can you guys hear that? I'm so used to it. I just completely zone it out. She's over there snoring so loud. Anyone have a thought? At this point, I would love a volunteer. And it could be, and so if you'd be willing to volunteer, you don't have to have your video on if you don't want. But I do need you to actually talk to me. So let's get a volunteer. If we don't get any volunteers, then this might be a shorter class. So I need someone brave to volunteer. And if you are willing to volunteer, just unmute yourself. Oh, you can't hear the snoring. Oh, good. It's really loud, but I'm surprised. How do you pronounce that? Lemore? Is that right?
Lunore.
What is it?
Lunore.
It's beautiful. Lunore. Okay. I thought that was an M. Lunore. That's beautiful. All right. Who wants to volunteer for this? It's super simple. It's not going to take very long.
I'll volunteer.
Okay. I got 2. Yay. I think I got 2. Okay. So I'm going to put Lenore. I'm going to put you on deck. Okay. So you'll be next. So who was it? Who was the other volunteer? Megan. Okay. Hi.
Hi. How are you?
Good. How are you? Are you familiar with any of these? Tell me a little bit. Like, how do we know do we know each other?
No, I've just been on your listserv and or your emails, and I thought this would be. I mean, I'm sort of familiar with coaching models and models of therapy, like cognitive behavioral therapy, because some of the elements are the same.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited about like new tools in my toolbox.
Awesome. Now, were you able to hear the first 2, or is this the first time you're popping in?
I saw the first one. I haven't caught up on the second one yet.
Okay. Now, can you hear my dog snoring?
I cannot.
There she goes. It's so surprising you guys can't hear her. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, I'm so happy to have you, Megan, and definitely check out the second class when you get a chance. It's super powerful. Anyway, so what we're going to do today is just this is so simple. Okay. So do you have a thought right now that you're able to kind of identify that's creating stress for you?
Yeah, I come up against it, like the not good enough, not being good enough.
Now tell me, like, is there something specific, like is there something specific that triggers it?
I think part of it's the comparison trap, like seeing, what peers are doing or how much money they're making,
Yeah.
and being not really invested in being my best self, and yet,
Yeah.
feeling like you're falling short.
Yeah. All right. Now, I highly recommend, here's the disclaimer for this class, you guys, is like I said, it's cumulative. I really believe that the tool that we're working on today works the best in conjunction with either the work, which is what we did in class or demo 1, or using the reality matrix along with sort of the downstream thoughts that I talked about in the second class. So this is not going to be as powerful, Megan, because we haven't had like a full coaching session around this. So what we're going to do though, is we're just going to use a tool from ACT, and it's an awareness tool. So it's going to help you become the watcher, and it's going to help you to kind of get yourself separate from whatever it is you're believing. So the first thing that you're going to do right now is you're going to just say out loud, I'm not good enough. And this time around, I just want you to allow yourself to kind of believe it, and kind of feel into your body and sort of experience what happens in your body when you're buying into the idea that you're not good enough. So just say it out loud. And then as you're saying it out loud, I might have you say it a couple times. Just kind of do a quick scan of your body and kind of notice how you're feeling as you're allowing yourself to buy into it and believe it.
Okay. I'm not good enough.
And one more time.
I'm not good enough.
And then one more.
I'm not good enough.
Okay. So just kind of tell us, how does it show up for you? Like, how does it feel in your body?
Well, I mean, it actually draws my attention to my stomach
Yeah.
and the weight, which is another issue. And I think it's just all part of a vicious cycle, right? Because when you feel bad, you eat, you drink, you do things that then contribute, in my mind, to weight, which is, again, even, visually not being where I want to be, right? Or how I'm feeling in my body because of the weight. So that's what I noticed versus I don't feel like tightness in my chest or, anything like that.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I call it the shame, blame, remain with more shame cycle. So I totally get it. Yeah. So what I want you to do now is I want you to, you're going to say it again, but this time you're going to say, I notice myself having the thought, I'm not good enough. So one more time, but this time in front of I'm not good enough, you're going to say out loud, I notice myself having the thought, I'm not good enough.
I'm noticing myself having the thought, I'm not good enough.
Okay, now try that again.
I'm noticing myself having the thought that I'm not good enough.
And one more time to measure.
I'm noticing the thought, I'm not good enough.
Okay, so this time, just comparing the two where you said it before and now you're saying it this time with the phrase, I notice myself having the thought. What do you notice, if anything, different?
Well, I think it goes from the first one, a sense of I am, versus, I think.
Mm-hmm. And
so it feels less me. You know what I mean? Like I think the part of the exercise is it creates a little space.
Right. Yeah. And so what do you imagine potentially could change, if anything, from that space, from having this space that you mentioned?
Ideally it would be have a different thought. But like you said earlier, they're unfortunately like the well-worn supercharged highways, and they just tend to go on, often not even necessarily on my radar.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, it feels like it's part of you.
I like that supercharged, what did you call it? Highway? I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. Ideally, right, once you've created that space, it might allow you to potentially use and bring in another thought, or just stop you maybe from, like, I can imagine, like, if emotional eating is something that you do, I do it too. Like, gosh, the other day I knew I was emotional eating. I just went for the chocolate malt balls and I was like, I'm just going to do it. But, like, if that's something that you do frequently and you don't want to, it could potentially create enough space for you to change your behavior. That's the idea anyway. So,
right.
But the thing is, and here's me speaking from 10 years of experience, okay? Because when I first started coach training, oh my God, like, I believed all the crappy thoughts, and my inner dictator was like fierce, okay? And so my inner dictator was fierce, and she thought she knew everything and that she was right. And so there was a lot to do. and I used all the tools, right? And I was super, super excited, and I kind of eat, breathed, and slept it. But I used all the tools, and I even had coaching sessions with my coaches. And I remember one coach told me, she said, it's sort of like when you're bringing these tools in, at first it's like, how if you've ever, like, reorganized your closet or any space. I hired someone to help me organize last year, and any space, right, that you try to organize, has to get really, really messy, right, before it can get nice and tidy and organized. And it's very similar with our thoughts, right? Is that once we start to become aware of our thinking and that supercharged highway, it will start to feel a little chaotic. But what I guarantee will happen is that eventually, if you continue to use the tools and you continue to have the awareness, and if you continue to find other thoughts that bring about the feeling state of relief, you will start to notice that it starts to change. And the coach that I worked with told me it's like an aspirin dissolving on your brain, right? Like, when you take an aspirin or whatever, like a Tylenol, it doesn't, like, you don't all of a sudden feel better. It sort of gradually kind of happens. And that's what I think of these tools. It's like, yeah, we have this supercharged highway. We've been thinking these thoughts. We've created those deep grooves. But what we're doing right now is we're actually rewiring your brain so that you create other highways. And those will eventually become supercharged highways, taking you somewhere really awesome, okay? So that's what I just want to say about that, Megan, is please have faith. Continue to use these tools because they do work, and it may seem chaotic at first, especially now that you have this awareness. But if you continue to do it and if you continue to work it, it is going to make a difference, and you will not automatically go to, I'm not good enough. Okay. It's like when I was saying this about the wild child and the dictator, my dictator is so tiny now. She's like, I've got the best, like, inner mentor now. She's like a mentor. She's like my own life coach in there. She's so cool. So it's real. It works. And just so keep doing it. All right. That's my
Thank you.
for you. Okay. Thank you. All right. So Lenore, let's try this with you, my friend.
Okay.
All right. So what thought do you have?
I guess the thought that currently causes me most stress is that I will, it's related to not being good enough, but basically that I will not find customers for the work that I cannot help but to do.
So I won't get enough customers?
Yes.
I won't find customers?
Yeah.
Okay. So the same thing. I want you to say it out loud. And actually, Lenore, were you involved in any of the other demos?
Unfortunately not. I'm a little bit, I have read a little bit about the work by
Byron
about
Katie.
the work, but not about Reality Matrix now.
Okay, yeah, I actually made up that word reality matrix. So it's kind of like my own. I liked it. It's kind of like the matrix. But you can go back to the recordings and check those out. And I really believe that this stuff is going to be way more powerful once you kind of been able to work with the other tools as well. But for now, I just want you guys to get sort of a feeling, like a just experience of what it's like when you're able to use this tool that we're doing today to become that watcher. Okay, so I'm not I'm not I won't get enough customers. Was that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I won't find any customers is the kind of the form that it easily takes.
Okay, I won't find any customers. So I want you to say it out loud a few times, and I want you to allow yourself to believe it and just be kind of like noticing how that feels in your body.
I won't find any customers. I won't find any customers. I won't find any customers.
Okay, so how did that feel?
Really tense. Yeah. Yeah, and I realized that I have been kind of mentally having that thought so often that basically today, earlier, I had that exactly the same feeling about the same thought.
Okay. And so when you're believing it, and you're feeling sort of that tension that you talked about, what are some things that you do or don't do? What are the behaviors that you notice from yourself when you're believing that thought?
I then start to procrastinate, so I don't do the things that I could be doing. And then it's really difficult for me to even formulate what I'm offering because I don't believe in it in that moment, or I somehow feel that it's doomed.
Yeah, and so that's kind of an example of what we did last week. Was we talked about, okay, what are the thoughts that we have? How does that produce feelings for us? What feelings does that produce for us? So we just kind of talked about how that creates that tension for you. And so based on that feeling of tension, there are certain behaviors, right? And for you, you said procrastinate is one. And so that leads to not getting customers, right? Like it's really interesting because it creates what we call that vicious cycle. It, like whatever behavior is generated from that feeling that you got from that belief, it will go back and it will prove your original stressful thought true. So that's why it's so important for us to become the watcher, and to kind of stop that process, right? And have the awareness of what it's doing. So now what I want you to do is I want you to just same thing, but this time you're gonna add, I notice myself having the thought that I won't get any customers. And I want you to say it 3 times out loud. And I just want you to just kind of focus on what happens when you say it that way.
I notice myself having the thought of not getting any customers. I notice myself having the thought of not getting any customers. I notice myself having the thought of not getting any customers.
Okay, nice job. So what did you notice, if anything, when you said it like that?
That I start finding it funny. that basically I'm in my work. My work is all about doing experiments and like testing your idea with real customers and things related to that. And then I go like, okay, so what have I been doing? Like I notice myself having this thought. How come I'm not testing this thought?
Oh, I love it. So it brings about sort of this humor, like this feeling of humor for you. So from there, like from this feeling of being able to laugh, what could potentially change in terms of your behavior? Because before you said you kind of shut down, you procrastinate. What, if anything, changes from this kind of feeling that you generated there?
I imagine that if I can hold on to that feeling or like regenerate it, then I would start running like small experiments. Like now I have been really, like I only recently realized that I basically need to rebrand my work. So not do what I have been doing before officially, but keep on doing the thing that my customers have always thanked me for. But I'm like, how do I sell it? But anyway, if I can hold on to that feeling, then I can start talking about it with the people who might be interested in those services. And run those experiments that I would tell my customers to run in their own theories of their own business. Yeah.
So that gets you a lot closer to getting more customers.
Yes.
Isn't that interesting? So really what we did here, thank you so much for sharing that. Your work sounds like super interesting. I want to hear more about that sometime. So send me an email, please.
Thank you.
I'm fascinated. So what we did today, and huge thank you to my volunteers today, is we just you guys saw that. It was so simple, right? So simple. I just had you say, like, okay, so when you find the thought, you say to yourself, I notice myself having the thought. And that takes you out of sort of automatically believing in it to becoming that watcher. Okay, so when you are noticing yourself getting triggered, right, that's why I told you guys to say the thought out loud and believe it, because the reason I did that was not because I want to hurt you or make you feel uncomfortable. It's because I want you to become more and more aware of what it feels like in your body when you're believing something that's creating stress, right? I want you to know how that feels for you, because you notice that both of my volunteers today, they described a different sensation when they were believing a painful thought. It shows up differently for everyone. And depending on, the emotion that you're experiencing as well, there's always a different vibration that is leading to a different physical sensation. Now, those physical sensations, again, I'm gonna say it again, I've said it each time, they're like warning lights, service lights in your car, right? Like you need to check your tires or check your engine or whatever. And it's really just a reminder for you to take the time to do some work here. And it can be just as simple and fast as I notice myself having the thought, and then saying the thought and creating that distance, okay? And that can be extremely powerful, especially if you use that in conjunction with what we did last week, where we brought in what Esther and Jerry Hicks call downstream thinking, which are thoughts that bring about a feeling of relief, because it will produce results that are more in line with what you really want. So that's it for today. There's lots of other ways to play with ACT, but that's about all we have time for today. If you are interested in learning more, this is one of my favorite books about kind of using ACT. There's lots of fun, playful ways, and that's one of the reasons why I like this tool. Actually, is it does incorporate a lot of humor and playfulness. And so Russ Harris, The Happiness Trap. Last week we did the Reality Matrix and Downstream Thoughts. This is one of my all-time favorite books on the planet. It is from sort of that Law of Attraction series, which I don't have a problem with Law of Attraction. I'm just like to be very pragmatic. And this book is just super practical. So that's a book that I mentioned last week. And then the first week we talked about the work with Byron Katie. She's written several books. Loving What Is, I think, is probably the classic. And so that's a wonderful book too. So I know you guys are just getting a taste of these tools. If you want to dive in and do more with them, those are some resources. And of course, for those of you who are interested in working with a coach, I have space to take on some clients in my own practice. So I've really been thinking a lot actually about death. So I'm reading this book, well, actually I'm listening to it. It's, what's it called? The Bright Hour, I want to say, by Nina Riggs. And it's her writing about her experience with breast cancer. and she doesn't survive. She actually, I haven't finished the book, but I know that she doesn't survive. And it was interesting. I'm really interested in reading memoir. I'm writing a memoir, so I really enjoy reading memoir. And so I knew this was a really good book, but I've been avoiding it because my mom had breast cancer. She didn't die of cancer. She died actually from the drugs that they were giving her to prevent the cancer, ironically. But the book itself has been reminding me of my experience of supporting my mom through her sort of experience with chemo and radiation and having cancer. But it also sort of reminds, death itself sort of reminds me of time and how quickly it passes. I think also just having young children reminds you of how fast time passes. I'm not going to cry. Maybe I will, but I'm going to try not to cry. But one of the reasons why I wanted to share this series is because I really feel like it's so easy for us to get caught up with the day-to-day, right? We can get caught up in work stuff, and we can get caught up in life stuff. We can get caught up in parenting stuff. We can get caught up in body image and weight stuff. A lot of that is important to some degree, but it can also distract us from our own life, right? And we can spend our entire lifetime, especially as women, taking care of everything else, and then forgetting to remember that we were put on this earth for a reason. Like I tell my kids this, right? It wasn't random, because there was never a you, and there will never be another you, right? You in this form, with this personality and these quirks and these talents, you're here for a reason. And it's easy to let our entire life pass us by. And then we could easily be 85, 90 years old and look back and go, what the hell? Why didn't I write that book? Why didn't I say that? Why didn't I do that? And so, I guess maybe thinking about death is reminding me of that. And so, some of you are going to take these tools and you're going to use them. And I just want to applaud you for taking the time, just this hour, to be a part of this series and to learn some of these tools. Some of you are going to be like, well, I know myself and I might use one or two, but I don't know if I will. Or I would love to read all these books, but I'm not going to. Or I know that if I don't have the accountability, someone that I can talk to every week, I'm not gonna do anything with this. And so this is one of the reasons why I'm offering the opportunity to work with me one-on-one. It's an opportunity for you to go through each of these tools with me. There are 6. And it's an opportunity to do that at a reduced investment, because it typically costs $3,500 to work with me one-on-one. And I'm offering this series for you to work with me one-on-one for $1,500. And so if that's something that you're interested in learning more about, you can send me an email. It's pearson.amy@gmail.com. And you can just say, hey, let's talk about it. I'm happy to get on the phone with you and just kind of talk about whether it's right for you. If anything, you'll find out maybe a little bit more about what it is that's getting in your way. We can get some clarity around that for you. But you can also we can kind of talk about whether this is the right investment for you. So I opened up some time tomorrow. I have time to chat. So if you, oh, thank you, Brenda. Yeah, I'm getting better at crying in front of people. So, but yeah, so tomorrow I have time to talk if anybody wants to kind of explore that and whether this would be a good resource. And as far as the rest of the series, I'm doing 3 more demos. Now, these demos are going to be kind of less, I would say, left brain based, less kind of around sort of using our thinking tools and our logic. And they're going to be more, I would say, right brain for those of you who are like more interested in sort of the less linear type of coaching tools. These are going to be a little bit more along those lines. So we're switching gears. And next week, we're going to use a tool called the Metaphor tool. It's one of my all-time favorites, extremely powerful. it's a tool that you can use on yourself, but sometimes it works better if you do have someone to help you with it. And it's the same with the living space tool, and that's when we're going to do the following week. And then the final week, we're going to be doing dream analysis. So if you have a dream snippet that got your attention and it's short, and you'd like to be a volunteer, I'm going to plant that seed now for you to be a volunteer for that series. I'm definitely going to need a volunteer for next week. So that's it, you guys. Email me if you want to talk about one-on-one coaching. Email me if you're interested in being a volunteer. I'm going to need a few next week, or one next week, the following week, and the final week. And again, thank you for taking the time out of your busy life to become aware. Really, I mean, that's what this is about, is just taking the time from sort of the day-to-day sort of craziness to just be aware of what is going on with you. It's really the first step to making the changes that are going to allow you to do something amazing with your one wild and precious life, Mary Oliver calls it. All right, you guys, thanks so much. I really enjoyed today, and I hope you did too. And please email me and let me know how this is going if you're using the tools. I'd love to hear. Thanks so much, guys, and take care. I love it, Lenore. Thank you. All right, you guys, I'm going to stop the recording.